Hey, everybody, it's Evan Grant from DallasNews.com and the Dallas Morning News, here with your friendly Rangers Insider Report. It's This Week in Rangers Baseball, y'all, from frigid Chicago. Hey, everybody, how are you? I am here in my underlayer before I get ready to go to Wrigley Field for the second game of a three-game set. Rangers are 11 games in as I record this, so just keep that in mind as I start to rattle off a few stats. And I wanted to talk about one thing and really one thing only today, and that was the offense. I think there's a lot of questions about the Rangers' offense. Uh, you were certainly sold a lot um, by the Rangers organization, and I guess through my reporting that this team was going to be an offensive juggernaut. And out of the gate, results have not been that. So, how concerned should you be as I move all over the place? What is wrong with me? Anyway, let's get back to our friendly recording. Um, Look, as we sit here 11 games in, and after a 7-0 shutout in Chicago on a night where, quite frankly, in my mind, they should not have played baseball. That's a conversation for another time. But the Rangers are dead last in the major leagues in batting average at 184. They are 28th in OPS, and they are 28th, tied for 28th in runs per game. Those all those numbers are bad. There's no hiding that those numbers are bad. But what I would suggest is that those numbers are a construct, and by that I mean 11 games in, I'd pay more attention to process stats than I would to actual results. And in that regard, I mean, I look at things like exit velocity. I look at things like, are the Rangers getting the ball in the air? Are they having any degree of bad luck? And I did a little bit of research going into last night's game because, again, as I wrote in Tuesday's Dallas Morning News and DallasNews.com, I don't think the 7-0 loss on Monday night is indicative of this team in any way, shape, or form. I do think that they didn't react well to the cold weather. I do think it's important that they bounce back and do a better job on Tuesday and Wednesday. But I don't think you're going to get an accurate snapshot of this team from these three games in Chicago. So, with that in mind, I want to take you into a couple other stats. The Rangers going into the week were the third highest percentage of fly balls, which means they're getting the ball in the air, which means they are doing what they want to do. At the same time, they have the third lowest percentage of ground balls, so they're not just hitting the ball into the ground. They were last in batting average and balls in play in Major League Baseball, which suggests that they've had some bad luck. Look, they've had some not great at bats either, but they've had some bad luck. In particular, against pitches like the fastball, which they were really susceptible to last year, they were 12th in exit velocity at 92.5 miles per hour. That's league average to slightly above. What that suggests is they're hitting the ball hard. They're getting to the ball. They were 16th in quote unquote hard hit percentage. Not sure I buy that stat as much. In short, what I'm saying by these process stats is I think the Rangers have a process. I think they're getting their feet underneath them a little bit, and I think it may take some time for all of this to iron out. If you want to look at results, I suggest not so much looking at Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, and Jock Peterson, Jake Berger. I'd suggest looking at the guys that it was important that they have bounce back seasons. I think we all expect that Corey Seager is going to end up hitting this year. I think there's every reason in the world to believe Jake Berger is going to hit better this year than he has so far. And listen, I know that Marcus Semien has taken a lot of grief from fans early in the season. He is coming off of a down year, but I also do think that Marcus has a long track record of slow starts, and so I'm not really that concerned with what he does in the first month of the season. I am focusing on three guys, all of whom it was important that they have either bounce back seasons or step up seasons. And in particular, talking about Jonah Hahn, Adolis Garcia, and Leody Taveras. Hahn, for the first 2 weeks of the season, has or the first 10 days of the season, has an 857 OPS, way above what you'd expect from him. Look, you don't want him to have a 600 OPS like he did last year. You don't expect him to have an 850. This guy plays catcher half the time, and he's somewhere above 750 with the power that he brings. That is a really good contribution, particularly with the fact that they're going to get more from Kyle Higashioka than they have offensively from their backup catchers the last 2 years. You look at Adolis Garcia. Let's stay with Heim for 1 second before we go to Garcia. Heim's already had a 2 home run game. He's had a walk-off hit. He's had good, big moments early in the year, which if you want to play the confidence game, I imagine that adds to a little bit of early season confidence. Garcia had some big hits early. His numbers aren't quite where you'd like him to be. He's 725 OPS. Listen, I don't expect Adolis either to be an 850 OPS guy, but I do expect him to be somewhere above 750. And I do think his approach, particularly with two strikes, his willingness to be willing to do a little bit less in the at bat than trying to do too much, I think have all looked very, very impressive early in the first part of the season. On Leody Taveras, the numbers are not good. There's no doubt about it. The batting average, on base percentage, and slugging, none of it is great. But what I do look at is this: a, Leody can be a very valuable player for the Rangers if he maximizes his value when he does get on the bases. First 10 days of the season, he's run and has been successful in 5 stolen bases attempts. He leads the American League. The Rangers have been after him for 2 years to be more aggressive on the base pass, and he's showing that. He is doing that early on. He also has 3 2-strike hits, which is a real point of issue that the Rangers wanted for him at the end of last year. In addition to that, he's bunted for a hit already, and he has shown a willingness to bunt, which is something else the Rangers stressed. And so I think when you take into account how he's running the bases, take into account that he is putting into practice things the Rangers asked him to do, I think the numbers suggest that, or I think the results or the process suggests that this is a guy who's starting to get it a little bit more. Will he ever be an everyday star center fielder? I do not know. Do I have more optimism about him than I did at the end of last year? Yeah, I do. I want to bring up one other guy. I want to bring up Josh Smith, who, listen, for the first 10 games has been as good an offensive force as the Rangers have had. Uh, Josh Smith is hitting 315 or so as we go into game 12. He's played third base pretty regularly with Josh Young out. Josh Young was scheduled to be back uh, in the lineup on Tuesday as I recorded this. But for me, Josh Smith has once again demonstrated that, listen, he's not just a utility player, and I wouldn't even label him a super utility player. I think the Rangers have to figure out a way to get him into the lineup as a regular, and that means 4 or 5 times a week. I do think, you don't want to play him every day. I think you do want to give him some rest, particularly against left-handed pitching and maybe occasionally against a right-hander. I think he's best served as a guy about 450 plate appearances or so. But what he has proven again to me is that this guy can make a difference and that he deserves more than just periodic bench playing time. And I think the Rangers are going to make a real effort now that they believe they've got a healthy lineup to get him into the lineup more regularly. So, yeah, the numbers haven't been great to start the year in terms of team results, but I do think that the Rangers are making progress on what they need to do to be a better offensive team. And we'll check back on this at the end of a month. Once you've got 100 and 150 at bats in, maybe you get a better feel of where this team is going. But for me, when I look at this team at 8-3, with the fact that they haven't scored a ton of runs early, is very is a lot of reason for optimism. And I'll add one more thing to the offensive discussion here. You want to look around the American League West. it's not like there's a bunch of teams scoring a bunch of runs either. So the Rangers are tied with Houston in runs per game at 3. Um, they're they're right behind Seattle in OPS and tied with Houston, or just ahead of Houston in OPS. So my point is that the teams that you would think would be potential contenders in the American League West, along with the Rangers, they're not off to good starts either. And I'm not sure that, based on the fact that the Astros lost Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker, I'm not sure that I expect the Astros to be a significantly better offensive team this year, based on the fact that the Mariners didn't do a whole lot offensively over the winter. You know, their big acquisition was Randy Arozarena last trade deadline, but they didn't do a lot this winter to address what is an ongoing concern. I think doesn't bode well for the Mariners. So my advice 11 games in is to appreciate the fact that the Rangers have pitched well, by and large played good defense, and found a way to win some close games. We will continue to evaluate as the season goes on, but don't evaluate 33-degree weather games with a 22-degree wind chill. They won't play another game like this after they get out of here. You know, if you go back to Cincinnati in 2023 when the Rangers lost 3 straight games, blue saves, that was endemic of what was going to be a problem all year. The bullpen blowing leads was an issue all year. Playing in this kind of weather and the fact that they looked a little bit slow the first night on the field, I don't think that's a significant factor in how this team will play for the rest of this year. So hopefully, as the season gets going, the Rangers offense will get going too, and I'll stop stumbling over words and backtracking, and I'll get a little bit more linear in these discussions. But until then, you're going to have to make do with this. Peace out, everybody. It's been great to talk to you. Hopefully we'll have you around all year. Bye-bye. This is good video.